Hello again! This week we are going to assemble our pauldron that we've been working on for 9 weeks now, or 2 afternoons in my time. How we're going to do it is we're going to connect the various lames using flexible leather hinges. There are 3 different broad categories of ways to attach bits of things together in armoring. There are pin joints, which are probably what a lot of you imagine as, and they pivot around like this. And those are usually rivets that go right through the metal. And when we make this guy, we'll talk more about how to get those in and how to get them right. There are also hinge joints, which are just hinges, like door hinges that you put on the metal, and then it will open and close like a door. So we'll use those for closing the vambrace around the arm. The most common kind of joint, though, is a more flexible joint, usually done using a piece of leather attached to both pieces. The reason we use leather instead of, say, a pin joint or hinge is it gives us more degrees of freedom. So with a pin joint, you have to have things very carefully lined up, same thing with a hinge. But with leather, if things aren't quite lined up, the leather will do the stretching, the moving, and the bending for us, which is a lot more like how our body moves, because we're basically covered in leather. So what we did last week was punch a bunch of holes. I have also made some leather straps. Bits of vegetable tan leather that I cut 2 centimeters wide and then punched 4 holes in at 3.5 centimeters apart. Or if you are in America, that would be 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch and 3/8 apart. Yeah, that sounds about right. The distance between these holes is going to be the distance between our lames. So we want them nice and even, so each lame is the same distance apart, and you can just pick that distance based on how much of a space you want. You don't have to use leather. I use it because it's sort of authentic and I have a bunch lying around, but nylon webbing or cotton webbing works just as well. Any durable material that is going to be flexible and isn't going to fray or tear away from the rivet that you put through it will work just fine. Okay, I mentioned rivets. This is where you have way more options than you need. So the thing that you attach the strap to the metal with can be any of a huge number of things. You can just use a screw and a nut. Those usually aren't very attractive, but sometimes that's kind of the look you're going for. If you are going to go the screw and nut route, I'd recommend grabbing something with sometimes they're called aviation nuts or locking nuts. They have a little nylon ring inside them that keeps them from backing off. That means you can put them in and they won't creep backwards over time. Another option on that vein are screw posts, sometimes called Chicago screws. And then you have a screw on one side and then sort of an anti-screw on the other. It has a post with a threaded hole in it, and you can screw them together and tighten them up, and that will do the job for you very well. I tend to use rivets, and there are a bunch of varieties of rivets that you can use. So here's 3. They come in different lengths and sizes. We have a brass solid body rivet with a dome head. We have a mild steel solid body rivet with a truss head, and then we have a stainless steel hollow body rivet with a truss head. So these are all options. None of them are the one I'm going to use today, though. What I'm going to use today are double-sided fabric rivets. You can get these at most fabric stores and also from leather suppliers. So what you have is 2 beautiful, in this case, brass-plated aluminum rivets. And you can see we've got a post and a little... So you can see we have a post in one and a little hole for it to go inside of. And then they'll sit together like that, and then we just hammer them down and they will merge forever and ever. These are great. They're easy to use. They give a nice soft surface that doesn't catch on anything on both sides. And They're pretty cheap. You can get them in packs of 100. They come in a few different lengths. The other nice thing about them is that they're very easy to hammer down. You can work with them without any extra special tools, which sometimes you need for the fancy rivets. They aren't extremely strong though, so you don't want them to be super load-bearing. I wouldn't want to ride into combat with these guys holding my armor together, but for decorative costuming, these are great. Order of assembly is really important, because as we go, we're going to cover up the previous rivet with the next lame. So it's a good idea to lay out your piece ahead of time, the way it's going to go, and figure out what access you're going to have at what points. So you can see every time I put down a lame, it's going to cover up the previous one, so I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. In addition to the leather hinge straps that I cut before, I've also cut these 2 extra straps, which I'm going to attach, which are going to hold the pauldron onto my arm and wrap around like this. They will be what are holding the pauldron around my bicep. I will talk more about that decision and how to do all that next week, but I need to attach them this week. It also means that this hole is going to be doing double duty. So. There we go. There's one. Two. So there's our 3 lanes attached together. Alright, so there we have a 3-lane pauldron. You can see on the inside, the leather strapping holding it all together. We're going to throw that on, put our bottom strap around our bicep. There we go. Next week, we will talk about how to actually affix this to a piece of clothing. See you then!